an element in this story yet again, whereas the deals with the Giants, and at least for the time being, the Mets have been put on hold, and the Twins back involved yet again.
All right, let me. I want to ask Harold this question because JP, I think you talked about this yesterday, but I heard Steve Phillips talking about this on the leadoff spot on MLB Network Radio last week. Does your interpretation of the Twins change dramatically or at all with or without Carlos Correa in terms of their standing in that division?
Will he take them over the top if they get Carlos Correa? No, I still think. I mean, I think he's. Yes. Let me rephrase that. I think the value for him with the Twins goes higher than it does with the Mets. He doesn't change if the Mets get to a World Series, because they still have enough. They were a team that was going to get there anyway. And if you end up having to go back with your normal third baseman, no problem. The Twins, if they insert him in their lineup, that takes them to another level. To make them a World Series team, I don't know about that.
But with or without Correa, can they win the Central? Can they win it with him versus a chance with? Because
right now they don't have a shortstop.
I don't see it. I don't see them. I don't see him moving the needle that much there.
Oh, you don't?
No, and he's a great player, but I think that there's so many more holes there.
Well, I think the big thing here to me, JP, I said this last week, if the years come down on the deal, say it's 5 years or so, other teams are involved.
That's a good point.
Where are we at in the years? That's the question. Is 10 years still on the table, which I don't think it is, but who knows?
Right. I don't think that 10 years will be the eventual outcome here in terms of a guarantee. Now, there are probably two different ways that Correa and his representation can go with this. Number one is to try to get close to what the original guarantee amount would have been, but for the deals, for the years to be non-guaranteed. In other words, that in order to sort of keep rolling the deal forward, you have to have played a certain number of games, a la the J.D. Martinez deal with Boston years ago. That you effectively have to keep earning it, that maybe the sticker price on the deal looks similar or even close to the same, but that the individual years are not guaranteed unless you can demonstrate health in the previous year, effectively as a rollover type of a contract based on health. That is one possible way to structure it. But Harold, to your point, I think that there are a number of teams that would look at this and say they're pretty sure of his health through a 5-year time horizon. All of these free agent contracts are an exercise in risk management. That is what they are. And I think that when you consider the amount of games he's played, which has been a strong majority of games the last couple of years that Correa has played, even through, especially last year, even through a bit of an injury and the concern over the lower right leg and the surgically repaired ankle from a decade ago, he has been a relatively durable player. And if you have someone in for example, Michael Conforto getting multiple guaranteed years without playing any games, I have a hard time thinking that Correa could not get at least 5, to your point, Harold and Matt, that he could get at least 5 from a team like the Twins or even the Mets.
Well, you're looking at huge dollars. That's the difference. The money is so big.
My hope is that he re-signs with the Twins so this stays relevant.
The Twins have a new explosive weapon.
The new explosive weapon can return.
The thing that bothers me, and I think the more this lingers, is you want a player to be at least perceived like, I'm going somewhere to win a title. And when it came down to the Mets and that possibility, that was in a eye view of him winning the title. Now I'm with Matt. You're sitting here going back to the Twins or San Francisco or the different clubs. Is it about a money grab? And that, you don't want to come off like that. And that to me is the biggest thing. And that's why I'm curious if it comes down to 5 years. I'm curious now if he says, if I got 5 years, then let's see if the Dodgers want me to play short. Because I know I can get to a World Series. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Or, for example, Harold, let's say the Red Sox. And you go back to his relationship with Alex Cora, which goes back to when Carlos was just getting into the professional baseball. They go way back. And you think about the Red Sox, and again, I think it's just I'm not being told right now that they're heavily involved. I want to make that clear. But to your point, if the number of years comes down far enough, and the Red Sox consider where they're at with their offseason and losing Bogarts, why would you not get involved for Correa in that way? And I think, Harold, to make that larger point, and I think it's an important topic to get into here, of what Carlos wants. If at the end of the season, if you had said that Carlos would still be unsigned in January and would be looking at a 5-year deal from the Twins, that's not how this was supposed to play out, especially when you go back big picture. He turned down $275 over 10 from the Tigers in the early portion of the offseason a year ago.
Yeah.
So that number still looms large in terms of what he's probably still chasing at this point.
All right, let's move on to a couple of signings that we learned of yesterday with veteran players on the transactions column. Johnny Cueto going to South Florida to be a Marlin.
I love this deal for the Marlins and for Cueto. Cueto had a very quietly effective season for the Chicago White Sox in 2022. The shimmy was back. You see him on the mound there. I love that delivery from Johnny. He's someone that, because of his creativity and just pitchability, he is a hot-end all-star pitcher, Harold. There is still, in my mind, a lot of baseball left in Johnny Cueto, and this is a team that I had been told during the course of the offseason was one that was involved in the Cueto conversations for weeks, if not months, a city that he would very much like to pitch in, and now he gets a chance to do it. What this also says to me, Matt, is the possibility of a Pablo Lopez trade from the Marlins. Now, a lot of different teams are still, I think, looking for help there in the pitching side of things. Here's what their rotation looks like at the moment. Edward Cabrera, a really interesting emerging arm that I think is still underrated in the game that I'm really excited about. You see now 6 legitimate starting pitchers, and this is where the potential of moving Lopez out, and as we see it there, Sixto Sanchez potentially coming back at some point in 2023, there is enough depth to move a starting pitcher. So for Kim Ng, I think that's going to be a big topic in the weeks ahead. Does a team get to spring training now that we're only a month away with a short or with a longer spring because, of course, the WBC? Does the team show up a month from now and say, wait a minute, we have a need for a starting pitcher, and is the Pablo Lopez trade conversation moving forward now to the start of spring training and to allow teams to get a little bit more of a big picture of what their rotation looks like?
All right, well, back up the miniature horse trailer because Johnny's going south. Yeah, there it is. It's not quite full size, and it's got real choppy little steps like Sean Burrows used to run.
You know those things poop constantly.
Oh, they do, and so do the goats. Bringing all the livestock down to Miami. One last transaction to report on. I thought that, Brandon Belt was going to get some bites in Tampa. But there is an agreement, or reported agreement, for him to go to the Blue Jays on a 1-year, $9.3 million deal. This is interesting.
Yes, and actually the Mariners liked him a lot as well, Matt, in terms of this offseason and wanting to get a little bit more left-handed. But I love this deal for the Toronto Blue Jays. That they began this offseason needing to find some ways to add left-handed bats. They first acquire Kevin Kiermaier, then comes the Dalton Varsho deal, and now Brandon Belt. And Belt can be your DH. He can spell Vladdy for a day at first. I think this is a really good acquisition for the Jays at a manageable number. Again,